It was an ordinary Tuesday in early September until it wasn't. September 10th, 2025 began like any other day at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Students bustled across campus, professors hurried into lecture halls, and the late summer sun beat down on the mountains that frame the valley. By noon, though, the campus would be thrust into chaos. At the center of it all was a man whose name had long provoked cheers from some and outrage from others. Charlie Kirk, a political influencer, activist, and the co-founder of Turning Point USA. By nightfall, he would be dead, and America would once again be grappling with the question of whether ideas and debates can still be expressed safely in public spaces, or whether violence has become the new punctuation mark in America's political discourse. Charlie Kirk was just 31 years old. To his supporters, he was a fearless voice for conservative youth, insisting on the right to speak even when his ideas clashed with the culture of academia. To his critics, he was a provocateur, someone who thrived on confrontation, using sharp words to ignite debates and stir headlines. But regardless of what side you stood on, few could deny his influence. And on that Tuesday, Kirk arrived at Utah Valley University to host one of his signature events, a Prove Me Wrong session. He would sit at a table with a sign inviting students to come forward and challenge his ideas. It was the kind of event that embodied both the best and worst of free speech, passionate debate. According to Reuters, around 3,000 people gathered for the event. It was just after 12:20 p.m. Mountain Time when Kirk began speaking. The atmosphere was tense, but familiar. Then everything changed. Witnesses told the Associated Press they saw Kirk flinch, his hand darting to his neck. At first, some thought it might have been a firecracker, a prank, something to disrupt the event. But within seconds, the truth became undeniable. The sound was a gunshot. Students screamed and scattered, shouting for more hands, more supplies, anything that could stop the bleeding. But the damage had been done. The bullet had struck his neck, a fatal wound. Within minutes, the 31-year-old influencer's life was slipping away. Investigators quickly realized this was not a close-range shooting. It was a sniper attack. Law enforcement said the shot appeared to have been fired from an elevated structure about 200 feet away. This was no random outburst. It was precise, calculated, and cold. According to People magazine, within hours, authorities discovered a high-powered bolt-action rifle abandoned in a wooded area near the campus. Forensic teams rushed to test it. The search for the shooter began immediately. Images of a person of interest described as college-aged, dressed in dark clothing, were released by the FBI. As ABC News reported, tips began flooding in. 2 individuals were initially detained, questioned, and later released, which meant the real suspect was still out there. A campus in shock, a nation on edge. To understand why this event sent shockwaves far beyond Utah, we have to understand who Charlie Kirk was and what he represented. Kirk rose to prominence as a young conservative voice during the 2010s. By the time he co-founded Turning Point USA, he was still in his 20s. His organization became a powerful force in campus politics, holding rallies, inviting speakers, and engaging in the online battles that define much of modern debate. He was admired by conservative students for standing up to what they called liberal indoctrination, and vilified by progressive groups who accused him of promoting intolerance. He wasn't a politician in the traditional sense. He never held elected office, but his influence was undeniable. He had the ear of prominent leaders, was a frequent guest on conservative media. In short, Charlie Kirk mattered. While officials have not yet confirmed a motive, Utah's Governor Spencer Cox immediately referred to the shooting as a political assassination. That phrase echoed across headlines in NBC News. Law enforcement has been cautious, saying the investigation is ongoing, but the public has already framed it as more than a tragedy. To many, it was a chilling sign of how divided America has become, that debate is no longer met with words, but with bullets. The crowd of 3,000 people, many of them students, were left traumatized. As one witness told AP News, videos shared online showed the panic as people ducked for cover, police locked down the campus, helicopters circled overhead. Days later, the FBI continued appealing for tips. Yet, no one has been arrested. The shockwaves were immediate. President Joe Biden issued a statement saying violence has no place in American democracy. Vigils were held in cities across the country. Outside of Utah Valley University, students left flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. Free speech should never cost your life. Read one sign. But as investigators worked, new questions emerged. Some reports suggested the rifle might have been inscribed with political slogans, references to trans rights, and anti-fascist messages. If true, it could hint at motive, but officials stressed this detail was unverified and part of an ongoing forensic review. For the public, however, even the hint of ideology raised fears. Was this the beginning of a wave of politically motivated violence, or a single act of extremism? For Kirk's family, friends, and supporters, the pain was personal. Turning Point, USA announced his death on social media, calling him a patriot, a fighter, and a leader whose voice will not be silenced. Thousands of posts flooded platforms like X and Instagram, some mourning, others angrily demanding retribution. Across campuses, conservative student groups held moments of silence. In Washington, lawmakers paused proceedings for a reflection. It was more than the death of one man. It was a symbolic fracture in America's already fragile landscape. And yet, amid all this, one fact remains haunting. The shooter is still out there. FBI officials have said they believe the attack required planning, preparation, and precision. It wasn't spontaneous. That means someone scouted the site, chose their vantage point. How is it possible in a country so closely watched, so tightly secured, that such an act could unfold in broad daylight on a university campus? That is the question haunting law enforcement and haunting America. As we reflect on this tragedy, the meaning goes beyond one life lost. Are we still capable of debate without violence? People, those 3,000 students who came that day to watch or to argue in the lesson. The story of Charlie Kirk's assassination is not over. The investigation continues. Tips are being chased. Waiting. As the sun set on Utah that day, the campus remained in lockdown. Families called their loved ones. The person who pulled the trigger was watching the coverage. Charlie Kirk's life ended in a moment of violence, but his story is part of a much larger narrative: the struggle over free speech, political division. His death will be remembered not only for what it took away, but for what it revealed: that America is walking a dangerous path. That path is unsustainable. So what do we take from this? But one thing is certain: September 10th, 2025 will not be forgotten. Not by those who watched in horror, and not by a country that must decide whether it still believes in the power of speech. This is history and happenings. If you found this story important, subscribe, share, and join us as we continue exploring the events that shape our world. Because every headline is more than just news, it's history in the making. Disclaimer: all details in this video are based on confirmed reports from Reuters. Some information remains under investigation.